Hello and welcome to this first episode of Series 1 of Keeping It Out the Net. My mission is to interview the very best goalkeeping experts from around the world currently playing the game or have played the game to the highest level, and to bring you the very cutting edge knowledge of what it takes to become a professional goalkeeper in the modern era. So don't forget to subscribe to this channel to get all the latest from my guests. And I'm going to be putting this into a book, a podcast, and onto videos. And now let me welcome my first guest to the show, my original mentor. I'm really excited to be talking to him today. He's the person who's made me the goalkeeper I've become, and also the person that I've become in so many ways. So I'm really happy to welcome Mao Dan to the show. Thanks for coming, Mao. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's my pleasure, Luke. I'm really pleased to work with you with this book. It's a very exciting thing that you're doing, and it will be great to work on it with you.
Yeah, it'd be great to learn a lot and also to, inspire and help other people. But let me start off. Obviously, I know you well over the years, but I've never really heard your proper story like right from the beginning. So just for the purpose of the video and the viewers, just take me back to how it all started for you becoming a goalkeeper, and maybe some of the highlights of your career as well.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I didn't know anything about football. We moved in with my grandmother in 1953, and I'd never seen football or played football. And I was about, I think I was 6 then. So I was 6, and we was fortunate enough to have a 10-inch screen television, and basically the first floodlit match on television. So it's the first live broadcast of a football match was a floodlit match between Wolverhampton Wanderers and Moscow Dynamo.
Okay.
And I sat looking at the 10-inch screen and sort of marvelled, and the fella at one end was throwing himself around in the goal. His name was Bert Williams, a very famous goalkeeper. Actually played for England and Wolves.
Yeah.
And the score was something like about 5-3 to Wolves. And the floodlights, basically, you could have had candles that have been probably made it lighter. They were terrible. And the goalkeepers wore these very thick roll neck jumpers, and they didn't have gloves. They didn't seem to have gloves, and it was quite wet. And Bert Williams was throwing himself around. I thought, well, that's the position I'd like to play. So as soon as the game finished, I went out into the street, and there's roads in Dagenham. They call them banjos. It's like a road, but you can't drive down there because they put a cement pillow in the beginning of the road. So what I did, I went in goal one side of the pillar, and basically that was my goal. And we had these rubber footballs, which were, you couldn't blow them up. They came to you already inflated, but you couldn't inflate them or deflate them. They were just there until it hit a bush, usually a rose bush, that punctured it. And you couldn't even mend them either. They weren't mendable. And they were big brown footballs looking rubber balls. And I stood in the goal there, and my friend kicked it at me and smashed it, and I was diving around. And that was the first time I really thought about goalkeeping. I'd never ever done that before. I never thought about it before. I didn't know it was the position. So I decided to be a goalkeeper. And basically every night I was out in the banjo playing in goal. But there wasn't really organised youth team football then. It wasn't like now where you can start playing at 5 or 6 and it'll go right on to men's football. It wasn't really like that. There wasn't a lot of youth football. And basically I started to sort of think about maybe I could, if there was a school team, could I get in that? But when I spoke to the PE master, he said I was too young. You could only get in the school team when you was about 10. Okay. So I never played. I just used to go and watch them playing for the school. And then we moved to Upminster or Cranham, and the school team I wanted to try and get in the school team, but they usually put people in the school team who were in the A grade, which I wasn't. And then we were doing a sports lesson, and I was playing in goal. And the other players said to the teacher, "Why don't you put, Mal in the school team?" So he said to me, "Oh, we've got a game this Friday. You can come along and you can watch the game, and I might put you on." Although we never had substitutes, but it was a friendly, and just shows you what I knew. I didn't realise that you should put the shorts on, not over the top of your trousers. I thought you put them over the top of your trousers. No, I had my shorts on over my trousers, which were short, but I didn't even realise you were supposed to take them off. And he gave me the roll neck jumper, which was a big, thick, knitted thing that itched terribly. It's really itched. And I sat in the class, and the match was already being played. But again, I didn't know what to do. He didn't say what time to go out. And somebody said, "You should be out there playing." And I was still sitting in the classroom, and it was pouring with rain. And I never had any gloves because there was no gloves there. And I went out there, stood on the sideline like a drowned rat. And after they were 3-0 down, we were playing Abscross School, Hornchurch, and he put me on. But the problem was, one, I'd never played a competitive game before, and two, I was about 2 or 3 years younger than all them. And we were 3-0 down when I went on, and when we came off, I think we lost 6 or 7-0. Yeah. And I remember again after the game, I didn't even realise that you had to wash off the mud. And I went home with my legs covered in mud that was cracking because it was drying out, and just walked indoors. I didn't realise that you had to use a shower or anything. It was none of that. So that was my sort of baptism to playing for the school. But he never ever picked me again. He didn't pick me or anything. Never said a word. So I sort of persevered, and I was always very agile, and I knew what how to dive and save the ball. But there was no coaching then at all. There wasn't nobody coached goalkeepers. Nobody really coached outfield players. It was just basically they gave you the ball and you had a match 5-a-side or something like that. And I started to realise that there was a local side called Upminster Juniors.
Okay.
And I think, if I remember rightly, I think they were about 11 or 12-year-olds. I think it's under 12. And I started playing a few games for them. And I kept saying, well, like, where's the gloves? And if you went in the sports shop, you couldn't actually buy goalkeeper's gloves. And then there was a goalkeeper, quite a famous goalkeeper called Ron Springer. He played for Sheffield Wednesday and England. And he brought out a goalkeeping glove, which was a knitted glove, which was like a cord. And it had table tennis bat. But if you look at a table tennis bat, there's the rubber on the front. He had that cut off for each finger and the palm, and they cost 50p. And I bought a pair of them, and they just opened up everything really. Suddenly I did some, I could, because the balls were very big then from the point of view of they seemed to stretch and were bigger than a 5. And two, though, whenever it was wet, they were so greasy that it was really difficult to catch them. But these gloves made a hell of a difference. So from like 12 until about probably 15 or 16, I used to wear these Ron Springer gloves. But again, those gloves were only worn between about probably October, November until about February, because that's when the grounds were all very heavy with mud and water. But you never wore them from, say, July or August up until October, November, or after January, or say February, because all you did was spit on your hands. That's all I ever did. Or you sometimes rubbed a bit of chewing gum on them, but nobody wore gloves when it weren't wet. Whereas now, of course, gloves are worn all the time. And but basically, that's what happened. And I started playing. I started to get better. And again, at secondary school, the fellow who was in goal for the secondary school a game was in the A stream, and it seemed to be they used to pick them. And I never really got a game until I was in the fourth year, and I got in the school team and I started playing, and I seemed to come. It's like everything really. I suddenly developed not only in size but also the way that I played very quickly when I got to 15, and it basically I was playing at the park over the park, and a chap come up to me. He was a very nice guy. His name was Eddie Chapman. He was secretary of West Ham at that time, and I think he was there 20 or 30 years. And Eddie Chapman said to me, "Oh, would you like a trial for West Ham?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And also my friend who was playing with me, Barry Bevington, he offered him a trial. So they phoned up to Barry's mum, and they said, would we go to Chapel Heath on the Tuesday? And we went down there on the Tuesday, and went Wally St. Pierre, who was a very famous scout at that time, still is, even though he's passed away. He said to himself, "We'll put you in a trial game." And we played this game, and I played pretty well. And I remember I was wearing these. They weren't the Ron Springer gloves I had that day. They were virtually like gardening gloves.
Okay.
Because they were. Peter Benetti bought a glove out. It was green, and it was just cotton, and it was. To be fair, it was useless. It was once it got wet, it was hopeless. But I remember wearing these because I thought that they would be the glove of the future, which they weren't. And afterwards, they signed us on schoolboy forms, myself and Barry, and basically we went. They had a very famous goalkeeper called Laurie Leslie, who was Scottish international, and he started taking us training, but it was ridiculous. We trained at Upton Park on a Tuesday and Thursday, and all we did was lapping. I thought, well, it's good. He's going to show me all these different goalkeeping techniques, and he never did a thing with the goalkeepers. It was just running. So all we did was lap. There was no, and then we played football at the front of the bowling ground on the forecourt. They've got a big forecourt that leads up to the main stadium, or led up to the main stadium, and we played on there. Well, you can imagine if you dived on that, you cut yourself to pieces. But we just used to get on with it, and it was all going quite well. And then basically, I was there for quite a while. I was playing in the West Ham juniors, and one day they had my dad in, and they said, "Look, we don't feel that he's really good. Like for us, he's a bit small, this, that, and the other. But we can get him a trial at Millwall." So my dad said, "Oh, why don't you pack this football arc up? It's a waste of time." So I said, "No, I don't want to do that. I want to see if I'm getting there." So I went for a trial at the Den, and I don't know, there must have been 80 boys there trialing, and obviously a number of goalkeepers. Anyway, after that, they signed me on schoolboy forms, and it was coming up to the summer holidays, and they said, "Oh, come in the daytime and come and train." So I used to get up in the morning at 6:30 and walk from the house in Cranham to the bus stop, and then get the bus to Upminster, and then get the train all the way through to Whitechapel, and then get the train through to New Cross, and get off and walk. Actually, it was probably about a mile, 2 miles, to get there for 9 o'clock. But when I got there, they just give me a pair of Wellingtons and a broom, and I thought, well, this is a bit strange. Why am I doing this? And he said, "I'll get up there in the stand and start sweeping the terraces." So all we were just glorified labourers, and I used to do that each day of the week. And then my wages was about, I think it was £6, and it was costing £7 to get there because of where I lived. And I'd been there about 2 or 3 months. And the manager at the time, a guy called, I think his name was Billy Gray, he said to me, just in passing, he said, "Oh, I've seen you." He said, "How do you like it?" I said, "Well, it's very good." He said, how long does it take you to get here? So I said, well, about an hour and 45 minutes. He said, what are you talking about? You live in Hackney, don't you? I said, no, I live in Cranham. He said, well, where's Cranham? I never heard of it. So I asked if I could have a rise, a pay rise, because it wasn't covering my expenses to get there, and they said no. So they put me on loan to Chelmsford City, and I went to Chelmsford, and I played there. They were a big non-league club, Southern League club, full time, and I went there, and that was good. There was a lot of old pros there. Like I was about 17, and they was all coming out of the league. They'd had their days in the league, and they were 31, 32. So there was old pros, you know, coming down in time. But it was good. I learned a lot out of it. And then I went to Brentwood Town, and they had a goalkeeper there called Billy Dunbar, and Bill was very established. He'd been at Romford for a number of years. Probably should have been a pro with a pro club, but he was a good keeper. But he was older than me. He was about 7 or 8 years older than me, and he was the first choice. But he then got injured, and they put me in. They put me in goal on the Saturday away to Bath, and Bath. Then you never went sort of M3, M4, or anything like that. It was all country lanes. So we got to the ground at 7:30 in the morning on a Saturday morning, and we got on a coach, and we travelled all the way down there, and eventually we got there about, I think it was about 1:30.
Okay.
And I remember there was about 5,000 there, and their team included a guy called, I think his name was someone, I don't know, it's something Norman, Gordon Norman, and he played in goal for Bristol Rovers for about 10 years.
Okay.
So he's a first team goalkeeper. And they had a guy called Henderson, who was a centre forward, who'd played for Wolves for 10 or 11 years and then gone to Bristol City.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of established players. And I remember coming out up the tunnel and coming out on the pitch, and it was a blazing day. It was about like August the 10th. It must have been about 80 degrees. And they attacked non-stop for about half an hour, but I pulled off 3 or 4 saves, which is amazing when you start. If you don't let the ball in the net and you make 2 or 3 good saves, suddenly you relax and you feel more confident. And I was lucky enough to make some good saves. They scored, and we were 1 up, and then we scored, made it 1-1. Came out for the second half, and I made 4 or 5 pretty good saves, you know, really, really good saves. And I come off at the end. I remember I walked off, and I was thinking to myself, I didn't do too bad there. And the crowd was all like clapping. And I suddenly realised they was all clapping me. And I got man of the match in the evening, Bath Standard, I think it was, or something like that, or he was Bath Echo. I got man of the match. And it was like, God, yeah. But because I had no guidance, or no one was telling me anything to do, we got home from Bath. So we left at 7:30 in the morning. I got home at 1:30 in the next morning. So we'd been troubled. So I got home indoors at 1:30. But then I got up and played for a Sunday morning side that I was playing for, Chingford Clarions, at Collier Road. I must have been nuts. And not only that, the worst thing was the next day we were playing away at Bedford Town.
Okay.
And I was just like I'd been run over by a bus. And then when I got to the ground in the afternoon on the Monday, 2:00, the manager, another famous guy, unfortunately dead, Tommy Wilson, he played in the 58 Cup final for Luton and Notts Forest. And he was the manager. And he said, oh, have you had a tetanus injection? I said, well, what's that for? So he said, well, you've got to have a tetanus injection. So they took me to the doctor at Brentwood about 2:00, stuck a needle in my arm. But of course, what I didn't realise, it was unfortunately making my arm virtually immobilised. And it sort of was all sore and swelling up. And I was sitting on the coach going to Bedford thinking, I'm not sure it's a great idea, you know. And Bedford at that time had some huge, huge players. They had a fella called Billy McCullough, who was an Irish international, played for Arsenal for 10 or 11 years. They had a centre forward called Ronnie Fogg, who famously scored against Everton in the FA Cup. And all the players that they had were good players. And it was about 5 minutes from half time. It was 0-0. And then suddenly a corner came over, and to this day, I don't know what happened. The next thing I know, it was in the back of the net. I thought, well, how did that happen? But what I realised, I couldn't lift my arm up. And I went into the dressing room at half time, and it was just a nightmare. I come out the second half, and that Ron Fogg was bashing me all over the place. And we ended up losing, I think we lost 6-0 or 6-1. They had a couple of penalties. And I came home, and I just thought this, I felt terrible. And when I woke up in the morning, it was like a bad dream. But when you wake up, you hope it's a bad dream. But unfortunately, it was true. We lost 6-0. So he stuck me back in the reserves on the Saturday, and we was playing Arsenal. And Charlie George was a very famous player. He was playing for Arsenal, and I was determined not to let him score. And I made 2 or 3 saves from him, and we drew 0-0, I think. But I played well, And that was Charlie George, not Nicholas. Charlie George was about 16, 17, and so I carried on with Brentwood Town, and then I still no goalkeeping coaches. I never had any coaching until I was probably, I'm trying to guess, I was probably around about 30, maybe 31, before I actually had a goalkeeping coach work with me. And the thing that I learned as well, I had no guidance. There was no guidance for the club, how to act off of the pitch, how to, things like playing 3 games, Saturday, Sunday and Monday, was ridiculous. They should have said, no, you're not playing for, Sunday morning side. But there was no guidance, and it was like that all the time. And I went to Walthamstow Avenue. I played there. They were a big side. But all these places weren't round the corner where I lived. I might as well come off the moon. The players that I was with were all East End Cockneys who were very, very streetwise. And I was like nowhere near their sort of level because I wasn't brought up in that environment, And I was at Walthamstow Avenue for a year, I think it was. And then I went to Grays, and I played at Grays. I think I was there 6 years at Grays, right. And that was good. I then went to Hornchurch. I had a couple of years at Hornchurch. Then I sort of was getting even, sort of older. Obviously, I was probably 25, 26, something like that. And then I was playing at Grays again. I went back to Grays, and I was out on a Sunday night, and one of the Billericay player, who was a really nice guy. He was in the wine bar, and he spoke to me, and he said, "What are you doing now?" I said, "Well, I'm playing at Grace." He said, "Look, we need a keeper." I think I'm actually thinking about it. I think I was 32 then. And he said, "We need a keeper. Would you like to come?" And he was like saying to somebody playing on pitch 89 at Hackney Marshes, "Would you like to sign for Liverpool?" Because Billericay were a huge club. Mm. And I said, yeah, definitely. The guy who was speaking to me is Arthur Coughlan, who was captain of Billericay and then went on to be assistant manager. And so on the Tuesday, I went down there to Billericay, which is probably the nearest I've ever been in terms of distance from where I lived. And the manager there was Colin Searle, and I signed for him. And it was a fantastic club. I mean, they ran it just like a professional club. If we was in the Vars, we would stay in a hotel, and whether it was at home or away, and if it was away, we'd go down the Friday night and stay in a hotel. All that kit would be laid out for the morning to train, and we'd then train and then play the game. And although I wasn't the first team keeper, I was the sub goalkeeper, if you like. Just to be involved in the squad was fantastic. And they ran everything superbly. And it's still a great club now. It's a great club then. It's a great club now. And we started doing a little bit of goalkeeper coaching, mainly me really taking the other keepers, if there was 2 or 3 keepers, and that sort of developed it from that point of view. And I suddenly realised that I think that was when I first wore a pair of the latex gloves. And I remember I wore a pair in training and the ball was going over my head and I just put my hands up and it stuck. And I thought, God, I wish I could have had these 15, 20 years ago, because I would have been possibly even better. And of course, as you know, look, the gloves now are tailor-made. You know, you can buy a pair of gloves for 25, 30, 50, even 60, according to what model you want. Yeah. But of course, what happens is you dare not wear them. One is you wear them all the season long now, and 2, in your head you think, if I don't wear these gloves, I might suffer. So you've got to really wear gloves all the time. So, but goalkeepers now don't realise that they never used to wear them gloves. And that was the first time I wore them at Billericay, and I stayed there 2 or 3 years. And then I was at Tilbury. I was coach at Tilbury, and then I was manager at Tilbury for a short period of time. And then I thought I'd like to start playing vets football. So I used to play on a Saturday. I was about 30, 38, 35. I started playing on a Saturday for Herongate Vets, and that was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. It was you got a little bit more time to see the ball, and you know, I could still throw myself around. I was lucky like that, and make saves, and I really enjoyed it. Camaraderie on the side was really good. And then I started playing on a Thursday for the PLA police, even though I wasn't in the police. I started playing, someone asked me. I started playing, and one of the players that I got friendly with was Terry Naylor. Terry Naylor used to be at Spurs. He just sort of finished football and he started playing. So he was playing the fullback in the side, and we had some good players and we done very well, and I enjoyed that. And then on the Vets side, I kept playing Vets football all the way through. When was the last time? I think it was 50. Oh, let me think. Yeah, I think I was about 50, 54. And I thought to myself, I wouldn't mind coaching at a club. So I just drove up to Billericay Ground, knocked on the door, and the guy opened the door, Justin Edinburgh. And Justin, he said, "Yeah, can I help you?" I said, "Yeah, do you want a goalkeeping coach?" He said, "Why? Are you offering?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, okay." So come in, he said, do 2 or 3 weeks. If we like you and you like us, we'll take you on. Anyway, I stayed there 3 weeks, and they signed me on, and I was there 10 years as a goalkeeping coach at Billericay, and that was fantastic. You know, it was really, really, really good. And the players, people that I met there, the people who run Billericay behind the scenes, like, you know, the people who do the jobs that no one else wants to do. So that means that basically there probably wouldn't be a football club without these people, Ron and Joyce, who are well-known people who've been at the club years. That they were there, various other people behind the scenes doing things. And I was doing the goalkeepers. I coached the goalkeepers, and you know, it was fantastic. It was left to me to do the goalkeeping coaching sessions on a Tuesday and Thursday. And if we had a game on a Tuesday, I'd do the warm-up before the games, and then on a Saturday the same. So it was really fantastic. And so that was 10 years. And the number of goalkeepers have, you know, I went coached and got in young and probably made better. It was really good just to be able to work with them. And then I started goalkeeper coaching at Brentwood Public School. I was doing the younger boys. They were, I think it was about 5 to 10 year olds. And then the sports master over the upper school in Wignall had a chat with me one day, and I said to him, look, I'd like to do the same over the upper school. And he said, well, leave it with me. And then they invited me to a meeting, and they made me the goalkeeping coach of the upper school as well. And then, you know, it was fantastic working with all these young goalkeepers. The facilities are second to none. If you wanted a cone, there was 200 cones. If you wanted a football, there's 200 footballs. And the grounds, the pitches were like Wembley. Yeah. And basically, it was great time to be doing that. And we then went on different close season tours, Real Madrid, Benfica, Valencia, and I never paid a penny. You know, I was just invited as part of the staff.
Yeah.
So that was really, really good, and I enjoyed that. And basically, I realised when I looked at the standard of goalkeeping and the way it was run all them years ago, there was no coaching whatsoever. And it's only now that, or in the last probably 20 years, maybe a little bit more, where actually goalkeeper's been treated as a specialised position. And basically, you know, these things now are being more and more used for coaches to work on different aspects, namely now particularly, you know, kicking. Whereas when I played, all you had to do was catch the ball and then boot it as far as you could up the pitch. That's all you was interested, especially with a bit of height and trying to hit the centre forward. Now we're playing it for the back, so keepers have got to have abilities with their feet, so you've got to work on the left and right foot. Distribution is a massive part of it, so again that comes into the coaching of keepers, especially at a young age. You know, you need to get that indoctrinated as soon as possible. It's going to always be part of their game. And basically, I think that's where the difference is, the realisation that whatever you do, whether it's goalkeeping, outfield players, or even things in life, you need to work to make yourself better at whatever you're doing. And I think with yourself, Luke, that worked for you, you know. And yeah, so it's been good. I don't think I've ever had a period when I've not been involved in football in some way or another.
Yeah.
So, but there's spin-offs for that as well. It teaches you not only, you know, about football or playing, it teaches you about camaraderie, friendships, perhaps how to handle yourself, conduct yourself, and act in a manner that people will be pleased and proud of. So it teaches you a lot of other things, football, you know. But certainly I've enjoyed it. I've seen all the differences, and probably the other things that are mainly, other than gloves, are boots. When I first started, the soles of the boot had nailing, and you had to nail the studs in by hand. No one had rubber soles or screw-ins. They were just leather studs. And they were big, heavy, clumpy boots with a toe cap that was solid, solid leather. That is all changed as well. I'm amazed how the boots have changed, you know. So really, that's, if you like, part of my story, Luke.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. Obviously, we met through obviously Brentwood School and lower school. I think that was the first time we met each other years ago now. And I think I remember coming along, and I just thought to myself, we're going to be doing like all this high flying dives and stuff. And I think that's what a lot of young goalkeepers want to do and expect to do. But I think one thing you really taught me was the power of the basics. And like, you know, it's no good if you can try and make a high flying save but not catch the ball, or if you can't kick the ball well, pass the ball well, first touch is right. So how important to you is, you know, getting the basics right?
I think the basics are important. If you remember, we worked a lot on the set position, just setting yourself to actually make the save. If you don't get that set position right, you'll dive, but you won't be correct in what you're doing. So the set position is very important, and we used to work on that every week. Also, your hands, getting the W shape so that you catch the ball properly. So these are things that when the young keepers, a lot of it's repetitive, But basically, if you work on that, work on it at that age, faults in any position, but particularly goalkeeper, well, if you've got a fault in your 8 or 9, it will possibly never change. You'll probably still have that at 14, 15. So if you can cut out the faults in your game and develop and get the structure of how you play and goal right, just a set position, it's very important. So it's good to actually work on that week in, week out until you do it as a natural course of how you adjust your position when you're playing.
Yeah, definitely. I think another thing as well is something you always said to me, you'd start to play games as you get older, you start to play more matches. And I think you can get very reliant on, what the final result was as opposed to how you played. And you always said to me, I know you lost 5-0, but how did you play? So, how important is it to really focus on personal progress as opposed to just the result?
I think I always say to people, look, basically, if you've lost 5-0, look at the pluses, look at what you've done well. Basically, was your kicking all right? So say your kicking was good, so that's a big plus. Do you make some good saves? If you lost 5-0, you probably had a lot of work to do. So how many saves do you make? Always take the plus out of the game, not the negatives. Look at the good things you've done. Done too much bad, negative things, that will pull you down. You won't progress. You've got to be euphoric enough to play the next game and forget about the last game.
Definitely. Obviously, you've worked with loads of goalkeepers over the years, and you've worked with maybe people who are very beginners. Then you've trained people who have gone on to become professional. What would you say is the key difference between someone who perhaps almost makes it or someone who does make it to a professional level?
I think determination. You can get people want to look the part but can't play the part, or they want to look the part but don't act the part.
Yeah.
So determination for me is probably everything. Sometimes you might have somebody who's not quite as good technically, but is so determined to succeed, it overrides that. Yeah. And that's the difference I've found. The keepers that I've worked with, the ones who are determined to do well, are the ones who've come on, gone to a different level. The ones that didn't really have the determination, but they had ability, but they didn't want it enough, have never really progressed to the levels they could have done.
And how do you sort of, would you recommend to define success? Because obviously some people, they played non-league as the highest ever played. Some people, want to aim for Premier League or international. How important is it, would you say, to, define what it is as making it, like in football?
Well, I think, I once said to somebody, if you're playing on pitch 89 at Angley Marshes, that is your Premier League. That is your FA Cup. That is your European Cup. So if you're playing there, that's the level you're at. Yeah. So play at the best level you can. And if that's how good it is, that is your Premier League. It's not, I wish I was playing for Arsenal. That is where you are. But make it be the best in that level.
Yeah. And what would you say in terms of, you talked about determination being the sort of number one psychological, mental trait. What would you say is the number one physical trait when it comes to being a goalkeeper? What's the number one go-to thing you would say you need to be good at?
To be fair, I think probably being able to make a mistake in a game and then carry on as though you haven't made a mistake. Yeah. So psychologically, you don't let that get you down. You're as good as you were when it was 0-0 as it is when you're losing 1-0 and you cost the goal. You can carry on blocking that error, if it was an error, out of your mind. So it's how you deal with mistakes.
Definitely. And when it comes to like drills, things like that, what's your sort of go-to drill? Like something you'd always do, maybe in a warm-up or in a session, something you'd always do?
But to be fair, what I tried to do was, I remember when I was playing and I we had these coaches that would take the whole squad. You could actually, it was a waste. He could have not been there. He could have recorded it and just pushed a button and played it because it was the same thing every time. So what I really like to do is try and do something that we've never done before.
Yeah.
And the way I've learned to do that is, with the wonders of science now, I can go on Google and Google in goalkeeping drills, and I'll watch them and I'll pick one thing that I like, and I'll do that in the next session when I'm working with the keepers. Yeah. So they never know what I'm going to do. So I basically like to try and keep them not knowing what we're going to do.
Yeah, definitely. And people often say, don't focus on your strengths, don't focus on your weaknesses, because, if you're not good at them, focus on what you're good at. But yeah. What would you say? Would you say always work on everything, or would you say just work on the things you're good at?
No, I think what you've got to do is try and work on everything, but particularly on things you're not that good at, so that you try and make the things that you're good at, the things you're not good at, better. Yeah. So it's worth spending time in training. What I do is if I'm watching the game, so I was at Billericay and we're watching the game, and the keeper, something I notice is not quite right, or he's doing wrong, or he seems to have a problem with, I'll work on it on a Tuesday night. I'll think of a drill to try and get rid of the bad habit, get rid of the mistakes he's making. So I'll try and work to what I see, rather than just do anything willy-nilly and not really coach to the strength of the goalkeeper I'm working with. It's better to have taken on something and looked at it and thought, yeah, he's not doing this right. Let's work on that on Tuesday. Let's work on it on Thursday. So I tried to work and suit the session to the keepers I'm with.
Definitely. And when it comes to, obviously, you've got training, you've got everything else that goes with it. Not just football training. You've got your own, say gym training, your nutrition, things like that. But then you've got, playing games. How important is it to, what would you say? Obviously, playing games is what we do it for. But I've had seasons where maybe it's injury or maybe it's just falling out of favour. How would you advise someone if they weren't necessarily playing? Does it matter if they're only training, or should they try and play for a lower level team, or is playing the most important thing, or is training?
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, it's great training, and Thursdays come and you finish training. If you're not looking forward to a game to see if what you've done in the week has been good, and you're playing a game, pitting yourselves against the other side, making saves, enjoying the buzz of the game, the adrenaline rush, it's all a bit flat. So it means nothing. You could do, all the training you like. If you don't put it into a game, it's there's no end product. You could, it's quite a waste. So it's better if you're not getting a game at a certain level, drop down to a level where you will be getting a game.
Yeah.
And then you're playing, you're getting match practice, and then who knows where that can lead you. You just don't know. You might get better and better, and someone picks you up, or you go to another club and apply to join them. But always play, even if it's a level that you may not want to play in. If you're not playing at the level you want to play in, you need to play at a level where you're getting a game.
Yeah, definitely. If you were to start again and start your career knowing everything you know now, what would you do differently, maybe, if you were really trying to aim for the top you could be?
I think I would have liked someone to have guided me a little bit. Number one, to so that I could have thought, well, yeah, I can, do this, don't do that. I would have liked a goalkeeping coach when I was 13, 14. That would have made a massive difference, because everything I did was off my own back. I don't remember even like the mill or the den on a Friday, they have a shooting drill after we've been sweeping the terraces, cleaning the toilets. On a Friday, they let us have a football, and they do a shooting drill. So as well as I do, Luke, you can have 10 shots, 7 of them go over the bar, 1 hits a post, and 2 go in. Or worse than that, it goes the other way. 7 of them go in, 2 hit the bar, and you make 1 save. So there's nothing in that for your development at all.
No.
And that's where I think, the goalkeeping coach comes into everything, because he can work on things like that. And I missed that. I didn't ever get that. You know, as I said, Laurie Leslie was Scottish international first team keeper at West Ham, and he's like my idol. Then I was 15, I think, and he was a great guy, but we never did any goalkeeping. I never did anything with him.
Yeah.
And it was like, I kept thinking it was going to come. Every time I turned up training, I thought, well, tonight we'll start doing some goalkeeping, but we never did.
Yeah.
So that shows you then the mentality wasn't there to make, coach goalkeepers as an individual position, specialised goalkeeping.
Yeah, and I think it's one thing, isn't it? You can get feedback in training, but I think if you can take it somehow to the next level to get feedback in a game, whether that's in person or whether you record it or something, and then show that to your coach, I mean, it's just invaluable feedback.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just think nerves is a big thing. I had quite a lot of trouble with nerves when I played, and it was for a long while. I never really had anybody to help me with that. I'd be very nervous before a game. Sometimes it'd go into the game itself, and that was quite a difficult thing, especially when you're young. And again, I never had anybody to give me any advice or talk to me to see if they could make me think of perhaps acting slightly differently, get my mind in a different focus, different mindset for the game. Yeah. So that, again, they're things that you don't think of. You only think of the things on the field. You don't think of things off the field. Things like worrying about the game, being nervous, trying to make a mistake is another thing.
Yeah.
So that again is something that people don't really think of.
And would you say, like, if you were at a club, for instance, would you say you'd recommend to have, say, obviously you have a club these days, they have a goalkeeping coach at the club, but would you recommend for someone to have, another second opinion outside and have a separate coach?
To be fair, the more help you get, it can only be good, can't it?
Yeah.
It can only be beneficial if you've got two coaches, one at a club working with you, and you've got another coach outside that you either pay on your own or somebody pays for it. It's got to be worthwhile. It's two different sets of eyes. No coach is the same. They all coach differently. We've all got our own style. So you're going to get one coach who coaches like this, another coach goes. So you're getting a different variation, which is a big thing.
Definitely. And obviously, when you get to older in life, you're not young anymore, but you're still playing and you've still got ambitions. I mean, how have you overcome? I can relate to myself to injury. I can relate to things like there's a need to earn some money to do other things. How did you overcome them sort of things in your own career to still keep playing and still keep focused on the football?
I think the thing was football was always been there, so I was only ever used to being involved in football. So I'd always find a way to play and to try and achieve the best level I could. And basically, opportunities come along, things like Billericay when I was goalkeeping coach, that came along. Things come out of the blue. There's always, in life, I think, there's always opportunities. And not if there's a door, a lot of people will see the door and they could go through that because the opportunities come about for something, whether it's playing or it's coaching, whatever it is. But a lot of them turn away. They don't walk through the door. So always be aware of opportunities that may present themselves. You never know when they can come along, but you just got to be aware enough and brave enough to take them.
Definitely. And people obviously talk about things like passion a lot, being passionate about football, goalkeeping. And obviously you come from an era where necessarily it wasn't all about the money. It wasn't about the glamour necessarily. It was about the love of the game. How important is that in football?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you've got to want to do it, haven't you? It's you've got to love the game. Otherwise, if you don't, it's hard work. You don't want to put it in, and there'll be days, a night match when it's pouring with rain. I've played in you name every condition, I should think I've played in them all. You know, it's raining, it's snowing, it's freezing cold, it's hot, very baking hot. You've got to want to do it, especially the days when it is snowing and it's freezing cold, and you're standing there in goal and mud, not so much now, but in my day, mud up to your ankles.
Yeah.
You've got to really be focused to want to do that, and that's why a lot of people fall by the wayside. They don't want it enough, you know. So it usually sorts them in from the boys anyway, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I remember once you said to me it was like a Monday or a Tuesday before a Saturday game, and you said to me, "You've got a game on Saturday. Like, when do you normally start thinking about that game?" And I said to you, you know, 3 or 4 days before maybe, and you were like, "That's good. That's what I wanted to hear," because obviously so many people just sometimes just turn up or they just prepare the night before. So how important is, you know, mentally preparing before a game days before?
Actually, it's funny, look, because I remember telling you that, and I spoke to other people, and they told me, I spoke to well, a number of guys, but particularly one guy. He said, "Oh, I usually think about the game when I'm about half hour before the kickoff." And you know, you just. I used to start thinking about the game, as you said, 3 or 4 days before. I used to think of silly things like if I knew the side we were playing, I'd think about the centre. If I played them before, I'd try and remember the centre forward if he liked to shoot with his right or left foot, if he was good in the air, or if they had a winger, when he crossed the ball, did he try and pull the cross back into the goal or away from the goal? All little things, even penalties. If I played a side and they'd had a penalty against me before, and I thought it might be the same guy taking a penalty, I'll try and remember what side he put the penalty.
Definitely.
And that, you know, I'd do that 4 or 5 days before the game. I'd have that in my mind, and psychologically, I'll build myself up to play and 4 or 5 days before the game, not half hour before kickoff, you know.
Yeah. And obviously, like you talk about, you know, wanting it. And I think you said to me once as well, you know, obviously most people play football and they do it for the thrill of scoring goals, but we do it for the thrill of saving, you know, big moment saves. And, you know, sometimes it's them big moments that can renew some belief in yourself and motivation when you've maybe had a bit of bad form.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's the old story, you're only as good as your last save.
Yeah.
And if your last save wasn't a save, you went in the net, you're only as good as that. But the buzz of making saves, what you know, they all change.
Yeah.
You know, it might be a double save, a single save, you know, look good save, top right, left hand corner. It's a weird sensation. It gives you that buzz, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of things like, you know, self-preservation, you always told me things like, you know, always have a bath after a game, or, you know, always have things like Vaseline in your bag because you don't want to be cutting yourself up and then you're going to be hurting. What are maybe some other things that you always, that some tips maybe that you always did?
I always had, I don't think they have them now, but they used to call them tie-ups. And I used to have, it's like, they're like bandage. They cut them in strips, and in the dressing room, they have a wad of them hanging up, and you just help yourself to tie-ups. I used to have, and you tie your socks up with them with your pads, your shin pads. I used to always have spare tie-ups.
Yeah.
Also, when again, these are years ago, but I used to have a hat for the sun, and I used to put my gloves in the hat and just fold the peak back and throw it in the back of the net. But of course, now they did bring out a goalkeeping bag, so then I would have my tie-ups in there, spare gum and Vaseline. If I felt I needed some in the game to put over my eyes, I used to put it over my eyes, stop the sweat running my eyes, and also all over your knees and your thighs, because, you know, not so much now, but in my day there was no grass at Easter, and so it would be basically dirt, and you dive and you get very bad grazes on your hips and on your knees. That's why I like in training. I've done it, you know, always, especially in the later years. I will wear padded tracksuit bottoms so that it protects my hips and my knees, even to the extent of I used to wear pads on my elbows, because they're points of your body which are usually worn, or, you know, you land on a lot in a save, a hip, an elbow, a knee. So you've got to try and protect them for later longevity, especially if you're going to play the game for a long while, and especially what age you might be. So you need to protect yourself. So yeah, I'd always have tie-ups. Is not really there now. They don't use them. I don't think. Do they have tie-ups or not?
No, I don't think. I mean, I think they use different things now, but yeah, but
yeah. Well, we used to have that. Sometimes deep heat as well. We used to put on before a game, especially in the winter. I'd rub my chest in with deep heat, and it burned like crazy, but it just made you feel warm, you know.
Definitely.
And those were things. But yeah, you know, that was the old days. Now so much keepers just really come out with, they run on the pitch with their gloves on, and you know, I never used to take my gloves off. I put my gloves on before a game. I'd never take them off until the game finished. I didn't used to like to do that because I wanted to keep them tight and tight to my hands.
Yeah.
Now the gloves are tight anyway, but I'll still never take them off, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, like you said, we've been on trips together to places like Madrid, Benfica. I've been to America last year. So how much does, other countries maybe serve a time and a place for aspiring goalkeepers these days? Like to play abroad, for instance?
I think the problem is, if you look particularly at our football in the Premier League at the moment, the likelihood of an English goalkeeper going over to a European club and playing in goal for them is probably quite low. One is because most of the goalkeepers are foreign goalkeepers here already, and two, the English clubs just don't seem to bring English goalkeepers through. It's a strange one, but they just don't. No, I mean, West Ham probably have not had a young keeper come through the ranks that I can think of probably since Mervyn Day, and you're going back 40, 50 years, whatever it is. They get goalkeepers, they put them in academies, they play for the under-21s, under-23s. They very, very rarely bring them through. So even if those goalkeepers got in to the first team, for them to go to Real Madrid, Barcelona, it's probably not going to happen, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, modeling excellence and modeling people who are at their best is one of the best things you can do. Who would you say, past or present, is the number one goalkeeper you should look to and maybe model yourself on?
I'll be honest with you, I think the standard of goalkeeping in the Premier League at the moment has gone down. I don't think it's at the level. If we round the clock back 50, 60 years, there was probably 5 or 6 goalkeepers who would play for their national team anywhere, so you get somebody, Ron Springett, for example, he couldn't get in the 1964 World Cup side. He was in the squad, but Gordon Banks was the first guy. But if Ron Springett was Scotch, he would have got a game for Scotland. If he was Welsh, he could play for England, but he wasn't as good as Gordon Banks. So them eras had 6 or 7 goalkeepers who could play for a country anywhere, and I think that at the moment there's a line of keepers that are probably very, very similar, but they've all got faults in them. Now, whether that comes from not working at a game enough, or whether there's certain they're playing in a really good side, but they're not really to the same standard, I don't know. But I've noticed a falling away of some of the goalkeepers in this country standards, and I think we've only got, I would think in the Premier League, what, four goalkeepers that are English or British. Let's call it British. They're all the rest are foreign. So, I don't know whether that standard is going to carry on. But you can probably, the English guys, there's not a lot of difference in any of them. Even the one who's in goal for England at the moment, there'll be one who's knocking on the door, but he's not that much better than the number one. There's nothing that sees him as being massively better. And the number 3, so in the squad, they might name 3 goalkeepers. The number 3 could be number 1, but he's not better, particularly than the number 1. They're all about the same.
Yeah. Obviously, people like Jordan Pickford or people like Adrian, they might not be the best technically, but they are a character. So, how important is maybe that commanding presence on the pitch?
Yeah, I think you've got to have that in your game if you can, where you've got a commanding presence. You give off a lure of confidence, knowing what you're doing. Obviously, communication, talking not when you got the ball, when you haven't got the ball. Yeah. Giving yourself confidence to the players you're playing, especially a back 4. That all comes into the game, really. You've got to be able to develop that in your game. You've got to be able to actually impose yourself, even when you're not making saves. You're calling for a foul in their box on our players, or you're calling for a throw on for us, even though it's just outside their box. Not only when the ball's 10 yards away from you. So you've got to obviously stand on the edge of the box, communicate. So that's another part of the game that's probably not taught. I've done sessions where I've taught young keepers how to communicate, where their starting position is.
Yeah.
You're not going to stand on the line and try and communicate right down the other end. Move out and communicate from the edge of the box, or even a bit further if you're confident enough. But again, it's about a lot of young keepers don't realise you've got a call. They don't realise you've got to communicate with the back 4. Things like man on, hold it, turn. You've got to do that with communication with players by talking to them.
Definitely. Last few questions. Obviously, the position's changed a little bit, and these days, there's more of a need to be, say, like a sweeper keeper, like a Neuer. How important is it to, maybe be like a Neuer, or is it more important to be best suited to what you're good at?
I think Neuer, probably, if you went back maybe 5, 6, 7 seasons, was definitely the best goalkeeper in the world, the best all-round goalkeeper in the world. I mean, not only his saves, but his kicking, his actual distribution from his hands and his feet was excellent. He changed probably the way goalkeeping was, or it changed when he started playing in goal. I think you've got to actually be able to develop and adapt. I think that's important. I think probably Joe Hart might be an example of that. The fella who come to Manchester City said he didn't fancy him because he thought his distribution was bad.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, could Joe Hart have perhaps changed his game to suit the manager, or did he carry on the same and the manager left him out? And Joe Hart is unfortunately one of those stories where how can he be playing on the for Tottenham but only on the bench, and all them caps he's got and all them caps he's had go down in real terms to how he is now by not really adapting to what was needed at that time. Definitely. He's probably adapted it now, but it's a bit late,
Yeah, definitely. Last couple of questions. Obviously, now you've been doing coaching right up until right now, and some of the things that really stick with me, when you've been coaching me, you'd say one more, but if it was a bad one, you'd say another one. You wouldn't stop until you'd finish on a good one.
I could never count.
Yeah, and you'd say things like, imagine it's a final of a big cup game at Wembley or something. It's just those little things. What would you say makes a really good coach, in your opinion?
I think making it fun, and also adding humour to things, and also basically, as I say, when I coach, I try to not do the same thing all the time. I try to make the sessions different. Whether it's actually coaching to a certain aspect or just different drills, so that the keepers don't get stale. They know what's coming. Oh, here we go again. We're doing that drill. I like to keep it different, and I like to actually want the people I'm working with look forward to the session where they think, oh, I wonder what we're doing tonight.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think that's important,
And just to finish, is there anything I've not mentioned that you'd potentially want to say to the viewers or the readers that would be a good bit of advice?
No, I think as normal, Luke, you've done your homework and prepared and asked the questions, relevant questions. And I think we've covered
Yeah.
quite a time capsule of how football was for me at first, and what it was like up until probably today.
Yeah.
So we've gone across a big time scale, and you've given me questions that I've answered. I don't think there's anything that I haven't sort of covered with you in general. The only thing I would say is I think for young keepers, you've really got to be determined to be the best if you want to be the best, and you've got to sacrifice things.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to say, well, I won't do this because I'm training tomorrow, or oh, I won't go out because we've got a game, we're away in the morning, I've got to get up. It's no good trying to turn up and be half as good. You've got to be right on it. And I think that's the difference. You say how much you want it. And, I know goalkeepers now, there's certain keepers that probably weren't quite as good as the other keepers, but they wanted it so much, they've managed to achieve what they want with their determination.
Yeah, definitely. That's been really good, Mel. Thank you for your time.
Yeah,
You
been
enjoyed it.
great. I've enjoyed it. It's
Thank
great,
you.
Luke.
It'll definitely be of use to many people out there. I know it will be.
Oh, that'd be great, and good luck with
Thank
what
you.
you're doing. See
That's
you
great.
later, Luke.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Mel. Talk to you soon.
Same to you. Bye-bye.